Welcome, dearly beloved, anointed ones. Truth doesn't whisper. It exposes, it terrifies, and it refuses to be ignored. Right now, someone thinks they can twist reality, manipulate perception, and corner you like prey. But the quiet witnesses are already awake. They tried to script you as unstable, while their own stagehands fumbled the props. They built a maze of stories and forgot the exits. People see more than they say, and silence has a long memory. The room keeps receipts even when mouths stay shut. One cheeky reality check. It's almost funny watching someone perform invincibility while the floorboards beneath them are smoking. This is not about shouting, it's about frequency. Your steady note versus their frantic static, and everyone can hear the difference. If this resonates, subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your engagement helps put truth above lies. Share one moment when lies around you collapsed under the weight of truth. God bless you. You feel it when a room goes quiet in the odd places, when eyes flicker and settle, when conversation thins but attention sharpens. The invisible audience is awake. They don't always speak, yet they annotate every scene. They clock the tremor in a voice at the precise moment a name is mentioned. They hear the rush to over-explain, the sudden edits mid-sentence, the story that changes shape depending on who is listening. They log the mismatch between words and energy, the smile that never reaches pulse or breath. Lies can sprint, but truth is the marathoner. It shows up with steady lungs and crosses the finish line without theatrics. That is why their campaign fails in real time, because reality is keeping score in the open. You don't chase rumors. You don't rehearse rebuttals. You stand still. Steadiness is not silence. It is clarity under pressure. It turns a crowded room into a mirror where every borrowed line fogs and every counterfeit gesture leaves fingerprints. Meanwhile, the one trying to paint you as unstable keeps adding new colors to the same cracked canvas. Every retelling gets heavier. Every glance seeks a nod and finds only doubt. The more they push, the more their stitching shows, and the thread leads back to the hands that sewed it. Notice how patterns announce themselves without an MC. People piece together fragments, the identical phrasing delivered to different ears. The pivot from charm to alarm when questioned, the apology that contradicts the footprints it claims to erase. They may never quote you, but they remember everything the other person volunteered. It becomes a reel of tells, the nervous laugh, the clipped breath, the dramatic flourish that smothers simple facts. The performance is its own confession, and the crowd doesn't need subtitles. You are not here to argue. You are here to be. In that being, you draw a border between theater and truth. Your stillness is a measuring rod the room did not realize it needed. It raises the floor on what passes for credible. So daylight gathers. What they meant as a trap becomes a stage light they cannot stand beneath. Your calm does not create their chaos. It only removes the shade they hid inside. And once the shade is gone, even the quietest onlookers see what was always present. Truth is not theatrical. It is consistent. Consistency is undeniable. You remain the unmoved center while their narrative circles the drain of its own momentum. Dizzy from spin, watched by eyes that have finally, fully opened. You have learned what most miss until the mask slips. Energy never lies. Words can be polished, timing rehearsed, and stories arranged. Yet the current underneath keeps humming. Obsession leaks through the seams. You sense it in eyes that flit too quickly, in a voice sprinting ahead of breath, in shoulders that stiffen when your name enters the room. People may not read textbooks on psychology, but they are fluent in instinct. Instinct hears the static beneath the melody. Instinct knows when concern is a costume for control. This is what frightens them. They believed only you could feel it. They assumed the crowd would be dazzled by surface. Yet people sense the drop in temperature when they begin to speak about you. They register the laugh that arrives half a beat late. They spot the denial that grows louder than the question itself. Their performance of certainty only amplifies the tremor underneath. Every handshake that lingers, every defensive tone over a small detail, every micro-expression when your name appears. These betray the truth before a single argument begins. Here is the quiet irony. They cannot switch it off. Obsession is not casual. It bleeds. It rides posture. It colors pauses. It selects the same charged words without permission. Even silence betrays it through sudden exits and strange routes around simple topics. Energy inks reality more vividly than explanation. While they work overtime to control a narrative, their nervous system writes a truer script. You carry another signal. Calm needs no rehearsal. Stillness asks for no defense. You enter, and the air steadies. People do not need the backstory. They feel relief. Contrast is revelation. Where their presence agitates, yours settles. Where their tone grips the edge of fear, yours smooths it. That contrast tells the story with no help from you. The room understands long before the debate begins. This is how the invisible trial proceeds. No jury, no gavel. Energy testifies. They cannot outtalk what their body broadcasts. They cannot drown out the unease they bring with them. People do not always name it, but they act on it. They whisper later. They exchange knowing glances. They avoid long conversations with the one unraveling. With every repetition, the truth gains weight. That weight lands on the liar, not on you. So you do not chase rumors. You do not rehearse rebuttals. You keep your rhythm and let reality do what reality always does. Lies travel fast but pull heavy chains that clatter on stone. Truth walks quiet and steady and has stamina. When people compare the two, they trust the one that does not pant. That is why you win without speaking. That is why their collapse feels inevitable. The current never lies, and the world has started to listen with both the ear and the skin. You stay anchored. They keep splashing. You breathe and the water clears. They thrash and the mud rises. The room reads the difference. The story reads itself. In time, the pattern stops feeling mysterious and becomes ordinary recognition. People trust their nervous systems again. They stop buying the show, stop renting seats in the theater of distortion, and return to the simple weather of truth. Your frequency keeps its horizon steady. Their storm spends itself. What remains is clear air, a bright line, and the unmistakable sound of chains going silent on the floor. There is a moment when noise betrays itself. Lies stop sounding like invention and start returning as feedback. A sharp ring that stings the ear after the microphone squeals. You hear it, and so do they. Every retelling, every sudden edit, every change of tone creates a copy of a copy. Thinner each time, easier to tear. At first people nod, willing to allow for foggy memory or stress. Then the echo comes back at the wrong angle. Yesterday's certainty becomes today's hesitation, and even simple facts develop shadows that weren't there before. You do not chase them, you let rhythm do the work. Human beings are percussionists. By design, we clap in time and feel when the beat drops early. Contradictions have a beat. The body keeps count even when the mind is elsewhere. A story told in one key returns in another, and the key change exposes the trick. Emotion no longer fits content. Words stretch to cover absence. The face apologizes for the mouth. People rarely chart it on paper, yet their nervous systems record it with ink that does not smudge. They believe agility is brilliance. They call it adapting, pivoting, clarifying. But adaptation without integrity is patchwork, and patchwork reveals seams. Every clarification multiplies failure points. Every let me rephrase adds a panel that does not fit the frame. They touch up paint and ignore the cracking foundation beneath their feet. Meanwhile, the echo multiplies, a phrase returns where it should not. A date stutters. A motive slides from moral outrage to convenient memory. The corridor of their narrative fills with mirrors, and each mirror doubles the mistake they hope to hide. You stand in stillness and let acoustics teach. Truth is acoustic. It carries without forcing. Speak it once and it harmonizes with itself across time. Yesterday's sentence resonates with today's act and tomorrow's quiet. That resonance is integrity, and integrity is gravity. People lean toward it without being told. Your consistency is not a stunt, it is a climate. In a true climate, echoes settle, distortion thins, and sound becomes clear enough for anyone to hear. Even those who preferred the fog. Their performance cannot survive climate. It needs fog machines and jump cuts, fresh costumes to distract from the threadbare plot. The problem with costumes is that they rustle, and the rustle becomes percussion for the echo to ride. In the hush after their monologue, listeners replay earlier scenes and notice the wrong props in the wrong place. A name that was never mentioned shows up on a receipt. A boundary that always existed did not exist last month. The echo refuses to retire. It clocks in early, stays late, and draws its pay and credibility they cannot afford to lose. You do not accuse, you remember. You do not push, you witness. The room does the rest. An eyebrow lifts, a silence lengthens, a whisper travels like capillaries. The echo migrates from ear to bone and settles there. Decisions happen without announcements. People simply stop lending belief. They become careful with their yes. They choose distance without ceremony. And the distance speaks louder than any speech you could have given in your own defense. And so the reversal unfolds. What they hurled outward returns to sender with interest. Their contradictions become the loudest voice in the scene, and that voice declares verdicts you never begged for. You remain the unmoved center while they grow dizzy chasing revisions, winded by the marathon they invented. Rhythm has spoken. The beat is undeniable. The chamber rings with what they released, and now the only sound left to make is silence. What unsettles them most is not your argument or your receipts. It is your calm. Calm is not silence. Calm is alignment. It is breath held steady when the room tries to hyperventilate, a shoreline that lets the storm exhaust itself without moving the cliff. Because it does not flinch, calm becomes context, and context becomes light. Your composure is the highlighter stroke the scene did not request but cannot escape. Without a speech or a defensive posture, your presence underlines the truth. Their noise scrapes against it and reveals itself as noise. In a world addicted to performance, your stillness restores scale, exaggeration shrinks. Watch what happens when you refuse to be dragged. A frantic gesture looks twice as desperate against a still backdrop. An inflated accusation sounds thinner beside someone who will not trade dignity for speed. Their noise registers as noise because your presence offers a clean signal. Without your steadiness, they could pretend. With it, they have nowhere to hide. Every twitch, every pivot, every over-explained sentence glows against your restraint. They wanted a chase. You gave them a mirror. In that mirror, the scenes show quick edits, rehearsed outrage, sudden amnesia. Your calm does not argue, it simply refuses to move, and the outline of truth appears. They tried to bait you into shouting because rage smears evidence like a thumb across wet ink. They wanted you to chase every rumor and answer every half-truth, but you withheld the fuel. You chose oxygen over fire. In that choice, hysteria lost its camouflage. Words that once sounded convincing wobble beside your quiet. Theatrics that once begged for sympathy read as theater. Contrast translates the room who is grounded, who is spinning. Beside your composure, their urgency feels like costume, their certainty brittle. Your calm turns the volume down on everything but reality. Your calm is not passive, it is pressure. It frames the scene and asks, do you see people do? They notice the tremor beneath the brag, the denial louder than the question, the story needing new scenery to feel believable. Meanwhile, you move at the pace of truth, unhurried, clean, consistent. Consistency is the color the highlighter loves because it binds the page. Your days rhyme, your words match your steps. The math of your life checks out in private and in public. Even the reluctant begin to lean toward you. Gravity favors what is steady. There is a divine irony by standing still. You amplify motion theirs. Your composure throws their fidgeting into relief, magnifies contradictions they cannot sand down, and spotlights the obsession they hope to smuggle past the crowd. They build the pit, they fall into it, and because you refuse to move, the light stays fixed long enough for everyone to see the depth. No scolding is required. The lesson teaches itself before witnesses who were not even looking. Like a steady sun, your calm makes every shadow honest. Their casting can no longer pass for shape when the light remains constant. So you hold position, you keep the breath smooth and the shoulders open. You let facts arrive the way dawn arrives, quiet, inevitable, uninterested in applause. Your calm becomes the color that refuses to fade. When the moment to speak comes, you speak once, clearly, then return to stillness. The room remembers not the noise, but the contrast that made it obvious. That is the gift of composure in a world addicted to performance. It restores proportion. It restores trust. It restores truth. Under that light, your path looks simple. Their theater looks crowded, and the audience sees who was steady all along you. There is a moment when tension breaks, not with a scream, but with a grin. Fear loosens its grip, and the room exhales. The act that once felt menacing starts to wobble. A chuckle escapes from the back row, then another, and the ripple spreads. What was meant to intimidate now looks absurd. People catch each other's eyes and smile because relief has a sound, and that sound is laughter. You did not orchestrate this reversal. You simply held your ground. Calm makes chaos look theatrical. Their accusations arrive in costumes, but the seams show. The same line delivered for the 10th time turns to parody. A dramatic pause returns as dead air. Even those who used to flinch at the volume start to hear the squeak. Humor becomes the doorway through which courage walks back in. When courage returns, the crowd behaves like a crowd again, thinking, breathing, assessing instead of freezing. Here is the secret of ridicule. It is not cruelty. It is clarity wearing a smile. Laughter is a verdict against illusion. When the aura of danger collapses, the performance loses leverage. People recount the latest outburst like a skit. They mimic the finger point, the sudden gasp, the emergency that never arrives. Someone whispers, "That was a lot for a little." The tyranny of theater shrinks to the size of the stage it actually has. You stand still while the scene rewrites itself. Your stillness is the straight edge that makes their exaggeration jagged. Without a straight edge, distortion passes as style. With it, distortion is obvious. They slam a door and miss the frame. They throw a line and forget the cue. They invoke catastrophe, then glance at the audience to see if panic landed. The glance is the joke. The room laughs, not because pain is funny, but because pretending is. Laughter multiplies. It moves between people faster than fear ever did. Fear isolates, humor reconnects. Strangers share the same breath again. Whispered warnings become eye rolls. Threat becomes theater, and theater without willing believers is only noise burning fuel. You feel the temperature change. The air thaws. What once held the room hostage now looks like a street performance that stayed too long in the square. They notice the shift and try to escalate. They mistake volume for power and shock for authority. But escalation undercuts dignity, and dignity is what audiences follow. The harder they press, the sillier the spectacle becomes. An accusation stretched past truth snaps like a rubber band and stings the hand that pulled it. The crowd remembers the sting. It will not give the same hand another band to pull. Your role is disciplined ease. No gloating, no pointing, no encore. You let truth set the tempo. You give the laugh room to breathe and then return to your work. That makes the contrast permanent. People remember the one who stayed human when the scene begged for more theater. They retell the story, and you do not need to appear in the middle of it. Your calm occupies the edges, framing the lesson, and the lesson is simple. Once people laugh, fear cannot reclaim the stage. The mask cannot glue itself back on. The joke writes itself each time the performance repeats, and repetition only broadens the grin. You do not have to win them back from terror. Laughter already did. You keep walking while the audience steps out of the old storyline into daylight. Hands empty, minds clear, smiles real. There is a quiet referendum in every room you enter, and the ballot is vibration. People do not vote with speeches, they vote with breath, with how long they linger or how quickly they leave. Resonance writes the tally long before language arrives. When a person shifts from concern to obsession, their frequency thins into a metallic whine. At first, listeners cannot name it. They only feel their bodies resisting. The smile holds, the nod continues, but something inside says, "Not for me." That instinct is the first distance. It happens beneath words, and it is decisive. They mistook persistence for influence. They believed that showing up everywhere would become belonging anywhere. But resonance is relational, not positional. You cannot command harmony by volume, and you cannot coerce a chord. People will humor a performance for an afternoon. They will not harmonize with it for a season. So the distancing begins not dramatic, not announced, just fewer replies, shorter meetings, plans that never cross the calendar. The room votes with absence. Your signal functions like a tuning fork. You do not chase, you calibrate. Calm clarifies. Presence without pressure becomes a refuge in a world addicted to push. You bring a tone that lets the nervous system put its shoulders down. People trust that feeling, even if they do not name it. They return to it the way travelers return to true north. You do not have to sell a compass to the lost. Relief sells itself. Meanwhile, their static multiplies. Every attempt to steer the narrative tightens the pitch until it squeals. The laugh lands brittle. The compliment carries grit. The apology drips with strategy and dries into dust. Folks leave these exchanges thirsty, as if salt were slipped into the water. They are not angry. They are empty. Emptiness teaches faster than argument. Bodies remember who fed them and who dehydrated them, and the body's memory votes more faithfully than the mind's opinions ever will. Isolation is not punishment. It is their echo chamber finally audible. The stories they told about you return to their own walls, and the walls are poor company. They hear themselves, and the hearing is hard, so they double down, as the obsessed do another message, another warning, another emergency. But every push sharpens the wine, and every wine pushes another person away. Eventually, the only ears left are their own, ringing. You, by contrast, expand without spectacle. Your yes is clean. Your no is gentle. Your pace is human, and human is rare enough to be magnetic. People forward your name with quiet trust. Talk to them, you will feel better after. That sentence is not marketing. It is resonance turning into referral. You have become a place, not a pitch. Places gather. Notice how the verdict arrives. No gavel, no post, no speech that makes the rounds. It's just a pattern of open doors on your side and closed loops on theirs. The community reorganizes itself by tone until the map looks obvious in hindsight. Peace at the center, noise at the edges. So you keep your tone. Let patience keep time and honesty keep pitch. If you speak, speak once, then return to the key you live in. Design will finish the work. For design is the quiet law of resonance. What you project is the room you will inhabit. They built a chamber of static and now sit inside its silence. You built a resonance of rest and now watch it become a circle. And circles, unlike cages, do not close, they widen. There is a difference between explanation and overexplanation, and the body recognizes it before the mind admits it. Explanation brings light. Overexplanation drags cables across the floor, trips the guests, and calls it clarity. You see the shift the instant their first story begins to slip? They start stacking words like sandbags against a flood already inside the house. Every added clause becomes a leaky window. Each revision to the timeline invites more clocks onto the wall. Soon the room is crowded with reasons, yet none of them hold. Over-explanation is panic in prose. It tries to outrun doubt instead of answer it. They rush details no one asked for, cite conversations no one recalls, name witnesses who never witnessed, and define moral terms with a zeal that betrays motive. Paragraphs keep growing, and with them the number of places the truth can break. They do not notice how their certainty needs scaffolding that sways when touched. Here's the trap: words leave footprints, and footprints make trails, and trails are easy to follow. In attempting to overwhelm the map, they draw one. A stray adjective contradicts last week's tone. A suddenly precise timestamp collides with an earlier sometime around. A new emotional color appears where memory once said gray. Draft becomes exhibit. Their monologue becomes a ledger they cannot balance. You, meanwhile, refuse the bait. You do not furnish the scene with extras. You give the measured account, then let silence be the period. That silence is not absence. It is architecture. It gives the truth clean lines in a load-bearing frame. People rest inside it. They discover the story holds without your hands propping it up. That discovery does more for your credibility than 1,000 defensive flourishes ever could. Over-explanation is also a physics problem. The more mass a lie gathers, the more gravity it generates, and the more energy it takes to keep it in orbit. They burn fuel to maintain altitude, follow-up messages, clarifications, disclaimers, the endless one more thing. Altitude becomes wobble, wobble becomes heat, heat becomes visible. Soon their inbox blinks like emergency lights, and every conversation arrives with a siren. They seek cool air and steady ground. Notice how over-explanation confesses without intending to. The need to anticipate every question signals fear of any answer. The urge to shut every window implies awareness of a draft. They keep talking because quiet would force them to feel the floor tilt. So they flood the room with narration, and in the noise you can hear the hinges. People step back, not angry but tired. Tired is how communities vote. There is mercy and restraint, and you practice it. You do not let them turn you into their echo. You will not live inside their paragraph. When you speak, you choose verbs that stand on their own feet. You let the dates carry their weight. You invite others to verify without pressure. Then you return to your work. That return is your closing argument. It refuses the theater and shows the life. This is the sentence that closes the cell over explanation, promises safety, and delivers confinement. The larger the story grows, the smaller their world becomes. Doors that once opened to a brief apology now require explanations too clumsy to fit through the frame. They are trapped by their own additions, surrounded by furniture they cannot move. You walk past the doorway, light and unencumbered, because you learned the simple art they could not say what is true. And stop. You have watched it happen before your name is even spoken. A pattern writes itself in the air like breath on glass, then lingers long enough for everyone to trace with a finger. No group chat, no meeting, no memo tells them what to see. Repetition does the teaching. The same entrance, the same tone, the same sudden urgency whenever the conversation tilts toward you. The same arc charm, probe, pivot, blame. It loops so faithfully that people begin to mouth the lines a beat before they are delivered, and anticipation becomes evidence. Patterns are teachers because they cost nothing to witness and everything to ignore. The body notices first. Shoulders rise at the first hint of dramatics. Eyes harden on the second contradiction. By the third, people are already saving their energy because they know where the road goes. The brain catches up later with language, but even without words, the map is clear. Rhythm reveals intent more plainly than confession. Intent repeats. Truth harmonizes. That is how listeners tell the difference without a lecture. Their nervous systems vote before their mouths do. They try to disrupt recognition with novelty, new wording, new witnesses, new scenery, but the skeleton stays the same. A fresh coat of paint on the same door still swings on the same squeaky hinge. The beat returns, the transitions arrive on cue. The crisis always appears just when the story needs rescue. People start predicting the exit line. Prediction is the end of surprise, and the end of surprise is the end of power. When a tactic becomes guessable, it becomes harmless. You do not blow whistles. You let the air do the writing. You let time turn the pages. The repetition builds its own case file, identical phrases spoken to different ears. The copy-paste apology that never ages. The way blame jumps hosts the moment questions arrive. None of this requires your commentary. A pattern that can be observed can be believed. A pattern that can be believed will be acted upon. That action looks like distance, like smaller audiences, like invitations that do not go out. Quiet choices redraw the room. Your steadiness helps ink the page, because you do not change key every week. The contrast is easier to hear. People hum your consistency under their breath when they leave. They feel the relief of knowing tomorrow will sound like today, not because you are stubborn, but because you are aligned. Consistency turns air into paper. On paper, the shapes of repetition can no longer pretend to be weather. They become handwriting, and handwriting is signature. The room begins to recognize who is writing which lines. Here is where mercy enters. You are not collecting victories, you are collecting clarity. Clarity frees you from the need to fix anyone. You set your boundary and bless the rest to find its level. If a pattern chooses you as its subject, the pattern will still reveal the one who writes it. That revelation does not need spectacle. It needs room. You give room by refusing to supply fresh conflict for old choreography. In time, the atmosphere shifts without ceremony. People stop rehearsing disbelief and begin trusting perception. They choose shorter calls, fewer replies, cleaner calendars. They choose you for the projects that require steadiness and choose distance from the scenes that love smoke. A map emerges not because you drew it, but because movement does. You keep your pace, you keep your breath, and the pattern that once tried to define you dissolves where it began in the air. You are not a prop in their theater. You are a mirror that does not move. When you hold still, reality settles on the glass and shows what is present. Their gestures bounce back as outlines. Their tones come home as colors. Their intentions arrive as reflections that cannot be edited by volume or by charm. You do not chase the image. You let the image return to its owner. A moving mirror distorts. A steady mirror clarifies. This is why your stillness unnerves them more than any speech. They are used to shifting people off-center, to fogging the room with urgency so no one can see straight. You do not sway. You keep your breath even. The reflection takes care of the rest. They wanted you reactive. Reaction would have given them clay, a chance to mold a mask and call it your face. Instead, you respond. Response is slower. It gives truth a chance to stand upright without your hands holding it together. The space you keep becomes a frame. Inside that frame, their own behavior tells a story they meant to assign to you. The mirror does not accuse, it returns. It returns the tremor under the certainty. It returns the grin that never reaches the pulse. It returns the apology that asks for applause. It returns the schedule that fills only when there is an audience. It returns the righteousness that appears when questions do. Each return is a mercy. It offers a chance to recognize themselves before the crowd does. If they refuse, the crowd will still see. The mirror keeps its station whether they look away or not. You do not become their reflection, you remain yourself. That is the hidden strength of the mirror. It reveals without absorbing. You do not metabolize their projections. You do not carry their storm into your chest. You let the weather hit the glass and slide. You bless what is yours and release what is not. Boundaries are the polish that keeps the surface bright. Your life becomes a studio with simple light. Simple is brutal on pretense. It shows seams. It shows whether the story can stand when no one is holding it up. People feel the difference quickly. Around you they can rest. Rest lets them notice. Noticing lets them choose. They choose presence over performance and clarity over spectacle. They begin to mirror you, not the noise. The mirror ends the chase. When someone cannot move your center, they expose their own. They speed up. They crowd the frame. They talk to the reflection as if it could argue back. They perform for the glass and forget the room is watching. The room learns fastest from quiet. You speak when speaking adds truth, not heat. You answer what is asked. You do not fill the silence with fear. That discipline turns you into a landmark. Others navigate by you. They time their steps to your cadence until their own returns. A landmark does not follow traffic. It anchors it. So you remain the mirror that does not move. You hold your line. You keep the light simple. You let the returns happen in their season. Where theater demanded reaction, you offered witness. Where accusation demanded panic, you offered breath. Where confusion demanded more noise, you offered space. In that space, truth finds its shape and stays. When truth stays, performance ends. The reflection tells the story, and you do not lift a finger to make it speak. There is a moment when pretense cannot hold its outline. It does not explode, it folds. The trapdoor drops, the ropes snap, the painted skyline buckles, and dust falls like quiet snow across the stage. The audience does not gasp, it exhales. And in that exhale, everyone hears how long they have waited for the obvious to arrive. They are not attending a show anymore. They are witnessing gravity. No twist can distract from it. The collapse is not a plot point. It is the room returning to its natural shape. You remain at the edge, unhurried. Your hands stay relaxed. Your face holds no triumph, only clarity. You do not narrate what wood and wire are willing to confess. A falling set speaks in thuds and splinters. The microphone's squeal is the truth feeding back on itself. The loudest sound is consequence, and you let it ring without adding an echo. They try another entrance, another costume, another emergency. The crowd has learned the cues. Applause lands late and dies early. Jokes that once purchased goodwill fall like coins onto carpet. Choreography meant to look decisive now resembles flailing. Overexplanation runs out of hallway, and doors that always open begin to stick. The spectacle grows precisely because you refuse to. Your stillness frames the motion and gives it scale. Scale shows how small the storm has always been. People who were undecided stop auditioning for confusion. They compare the cadence of your steadiness with the panting of the performance, and their ears do the math. Months of scenes replay in a single sweep, and the pattern does not ask for permission to exist. It simply asks for time. Time has arrived. Time is not loud. Time points. Reputation is a bridge held up by consistent beams. Remove enough beams, and the span behaves like spans must. It folds where the strain is. That is what they feel now, not punishment, but physics. The room is not angry. It is finished. Finished is quiet. Finished chooses different seats, different projects, different circles. Finished sends fewer invitations and gives shorter answers. Finished is the crowd turning toward daylight while spotlights search an empty mark on the floor. You do the simplest work a human can do. You keep your word and your breath. You refuse to let adrenaline replace discernment. When asked, you offer the plain account. You do not step on cables. You do not pull focus. You let the center of gravity reappear beneath truth. Truth is heavy enough to anchor without your hands. It does not need commentary to persuade. It persuades by standing. The collapse becomes a spectacle because the theater was the lie. The instant the audience trusts its eyes again, the show cannot survive. It is not victory that ends it. It is the absence of purchase. It is the collective exhale that says, we are done. With that breath, the noise loses currency. The market for panic closes, and the lights find the exits that lead to ordinary day. So you bow only to courtesy. You greet those who stayed kind. You gather what is yours and leave the rest where it fell. As you step into the bright, the crowd adjusts and follows without needing permission. The story moves forward not because you pushed it, but because gravity and grace agreed on the same direction. What remains behind is not yours to fix. It is a set being struck, a scene that served as a warning, and a lesson the city will remember without repeating. Let the lights come up slowly. Breathe. You made it through the theater without becoming part of the play. The noise tried to recruit you. You stayed human. Let that sink in. You did not match chaos. You kept rhythm. You did not chase rumors. You kept truth company. That is enough. Now choose relief on purpose. Unclench the jaw. Loosen the shoulders.